I'm delighted to be launching our first ever e-bikes for hire. We've seen a huge increase in those walking and cycling over the last 2 years. The new TfL Santander is helping to break down some of the barriers that stop.
It's so useful for people to have a first go on an e-bike, which can be expensive if you want to buy them for your personal use. And it just encourages people who maybe aren't as fit as they may like to be to actually have a go on an e-bike. So the Mayor has really embraced the cycle hire scheme. He's really helped us, he's very interested in it, he's helped promote it. Workers and key workers have had discounts, and we've seen a huge take up in that as well. So it's helped that, and it's just been generally very, very pro cycling and very much in favour of this new initiative that's going to bring e-bikes to Londoners for the first time.
It was wonderful riding the first e-bike for hire. For everyone, and that is making cycling more accessible.
Can you imagine a situation where a young person has just gone through a near-death experience and they was left alone in the hospital with just the surgeons and the doctors, and then they're released back out?
Good morning, I'm Dr. Ina
I'm from clinical leads and frontline practitioners.
So our youth workers are part of our team. So when I'm the doctor downstairs running a trauma call for a young person who's been stabbed, if we see that it's a young person that the ambulance are bringing in, we'll call Red Thread and they'll come straight down. While we can physically stitch up their wounds, we can't help them with all the challenges that they face that got them here.
Our main issue is safeguarding them whilst they're in hospital and putting them in a safer position once they leave. It could be helping them with their housing situation, maybe not going back to the area that they had the assault in. They might be out of education and employment, and that might be something that they want. This is all things that or the incident they was in, or to make them feel better.
I know the life-changing impact youth workers can have working with young people. That's why we're investing a further £7.8 million to support more youth workers to work with young people.
This programme has supported over 800 young people across London, and that when they are able to engage and work with a youth worker, their prospects for feeling safer, for feeling that they've got a life of future and potential, and that they actually get practical support, be it in housing or be it in health or education, has been greatly enhanced.
The partnership between the Violence Reduction Unit, the youth workers and the NHS is vital, because when a young person has been a victim of violence, we want to stop that happening again, but we also want to stop them thinking that actually they need to go out and get retribution. So if the youth workers can intervene when you're feeling more vulnerable, when you're in hospital, you might accept the offer of help that you didn't think you needed before.
I'm committed to tackling violence and building a safer London for all Londoners. I'm committed to tackling As someone who suffers from severe asthma, this is how I'm preparing for the winter. With winter coming, it's really important to flu.
Community. We need to make sure people are aware. This is a great time for them to get their booster, to prime up their immune response. On the flu front, we've been having a strong flu campaign in the UK for the last 4 or 5 years. We know that's made a significant difference to people's health. We're inviting people to come back in and get themselves jabbed.
I'd encourage Londoners to get both the flu jab. These rubber boats are part of our £40 million investment in the fire service to modernise and transform the fire service so they're better prepared and better equipped to deal with the challenges we face in London.
They represent the best marine technology available. They're on 24/7 at our dedicated river station, and they're there for the big rescues, for when we have to get lots and lots of people out of a situation on the Thames, but also for firefighting. What we've got here is what London firefighters deserve, in their job to keep London and Londoners safe on this river.
This investment and these changes are necessary to make further improvements and save lives in London.
This is just one part of a very, very significant uplift in investment. So £40 million over the past few years to ensure that we renewed our kit in all the places we need to. So new 64-metre ladders, new 32-metre ladders, the first ever prototype electric fire engine in the world, a fleet of new electric cars, and of course these two magnificent fireboats, all part of this very significant investment into London Fire Brigade to ensure that we're a modern, state-of-the-art, fit-for-purpose fire service for the 21st century.
Join me as I complete my London Lifesavers Programme training with the London Ambulance Service. Hi, I'm Sadiq. How are you?
Hello, I'm Vicky.
Thanks for doing this. The London Lifesavers Programme teaches crucial skills like how to do CPR and how to use a defibrillator.
Okay, so it's important that this one comes up here underneath the armpit. I think it's really important that Londoners learn how to perform CPR, because quite often it's going to be their loved one, their friends, their family that are around, and it makes such a difference to the survival outcomes of people if they have CPR prior to the ambulance arriving on scene.
My father died of a heart attack, and he had cardiac arrest as a result of a heart attack, and I really wish that I knew what to do at the time that he passed away. I wasn't with him, but I kind of really wish someone did know what how they might have saved his life.
We provide the training to all sorts of different people. So we go into businesses, we do pop-up events we've done recently in shopping centres, so anybody can learn the skills of being able to recognise when someone's in cardiac arrest and perform CPR. And defibrillators are made to be nice and simple to use, you just follow the instructions. But having that bit of training just gives you that extra confidence if you're in that situation.
I'm supporting the London Ambulance Service to get 100,000 Londoners trained to be a lifesaver.
Cardiovascular disease is one of the largest killers. It's one of the biggest causes of death in the country. If we can help train people up to ensure that they can play their part, just being able to try and help is going to be better than nothing.
I'd encourage all Londoners to sign up today and become a lifesaver. The London living wage has increased from £11.05 an hour to £11.95 an hour. Catherine, how are you? Hi. I'm pleased to be here in Moorgate to meet Matt, one of the co-founders of Roslyn Coffee, who are paying the London living wage.
We've got 30 people who work for us, 30 team members at Roslyn, and across the estate we can serve up to 4,000 coffees a day. And really the only way we can do that is by looking after the team. So paying that London living wage is the cornerstone to our culture, and it's kind of to everything that we do.
It's going to make a difference to thousands of Londoners across the capital. There are 3,000 accredited living wage employers in the capital, 11,000 across the country, and together that's going to mean a pay rise for 140,000 Londoners.
Having this extra pay has been able to make, I've been able to move out, live by myself, which has been, I wouldn't have been able to otherwise, so it's definitely helped for sure. It would make for happier teams and for more people to join it, because I get to do what I love and get paid the amount to keep me doing what I love, whereas some people can't stay in a job that they love because they just can't afford it. So it's really important.
The London living wage has a major role to play in London's recovery from the pandemic. We must meet these challenges by making sure that more Londoners get a decent day's pay for a hard day's work.
City, new city, beautiful, complexity, inner city, outer city, energy, technology, intertwining histories, diversity, communities, ebbing, flowing, coming, going, gleaming, glowing, toing, throwing, freedom, equality, sustainability, vibrant, capacity, endless opportunity. However you see this amazing city, always remember, the future of London is yours to shape. London Assembly, elected by you to look out for you.
I'm delighted to be launching our first ever e-bikes for hire. We've seen a huge increase in those walking and cycling over the last 2 years. The new TfL Santander Cycle e-bikes will play an important role in helping to break down some of the barriers that stop people from getting on a bike, including fitness, age and length of journey.
This is so useful for people to have a first go on an e-bike, which can be expensive if you want to buy one for your personal use. And it just encourages people who maybe aren't as fit as they may like to be to actually have a go on an e-bike. So the Mayor has really embraced the cycle hire scheme. He's really helped us, he's very interested in it, he's helped promote it. We've had the NHS discount where people, NHS workers and key workers have had discounts, and we've seen a huge take-up in that as well. So it's helped that, and it's just been generally very, very pro-cycling and very much in favour of this new initiative that's going to bring e-bikes to Londoners for the first time.
It was wonderful riding the first e-bike for hire. Once you've used one, there's no going back. I'm determined to build a cleaner, greener London for everyone, and that is making cycling more accessible.
Can you imagine a situation where a young person's just gone through a near-death experience and they was left alone in the hospital with just the surgeons and the doctors, and then they're released back out?
I'm pleased to be here at King's College Hospital to hear from clinical leads and frontline practitioners about the work they do to support young people with injuries caused by violence.
So our youth workers are part of our team. So when I'm the doctor downstairs running a trauma call for a young person who's been stabbed, if we see that it's a young person that the ambulance are bringing in, we'll call Red Thread and they'll come straight down. While we can physically stitch up their wounds, we can't help them with all the challenges that they face that got them here.
Our main issue is safeguarding them whilst they're in hospital and putting them in a safer position.
Please switch your electronic devices to silent mode now, and if you wish to tweet about tonight's event, the hashtag is PQT. This evening we have 6 topic areas to discuss, and we'll spend up to 18 minutes on each. This is how it works. For each topic, the chairman will take 3 questions at a time. The first 2 questions will be taken from those of you here in the audience with your hands raised. The third question will be taken from the live chat room of our online registered audience participating via the live stream. For each topic, the most liked questions, as voted for by the online registered audience, will be asked. The chairman will then direct these 3 questions for each topic to the Mayor or an Assembly member. We have no advance notice of the questions. For those of you here in the audience, if you're able to stand to ask your question, please do this, as it will make it easier for those on stage and the cameras to see you. Please wait for a member of staff with a microphone to reach you before you start speaking. Please keep your questions short so we can get to as many of you as possible, and please ask questions rather than make speeches. With so many of you here in person and online, we won't have the time for everybody to ask a question. So, if you don't get yours asked tonight, please do email mayor@london.gov.uk. Please also remember to fill in the feedback form online. There are QR codes for you to scan your device or log on to our dedicated webpage, london.gov.uk/PQT. We'll finish tonight at 9 p.m. sharp. And now, everyone, without any further ado, please put your hands together for your chairman this evening, the Assembly Member for Havering and Redbridge, Keith Prince.
Good evening and welcome to Redbridge. I'd like to just quickly welcome the Deputy Mayors who are here today. Thank you for coming. And we have the Deputy Leader for Redbridge Council, Cam Rye. Thank you very much for coming, Cam. Appreciate that. Thought I'd just embarrass him. He's a friend. So good evening, welcome. For those here and those watching online, this is the 45th People's Question Time. And this is the second time that this event has been held in Redbridge. And it's the 13th People's Question Time for our current Mayor, Sadiq Khan. So it's great to see so many of you here. It's actually packed, very good turnout. I'll just have a few brief announcements before I introduce the London Assembly and the Mayor. Then we can take some questions. the Mayor and London Assembly work to improve the lives for London, bless you, lives of Londoners and make London a better place. People's Question Time is your chance to voice your concerns and ask the Mayor and the Assembly what we are going to do for the capital and its people. Now we're just about ready, so please first welcome to the stage your London Assembly members. Keep going, there's more to come. There's more to come. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the third Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan. Okay, thank you. So tonight we'll be taking questions on the following topics. So if your question relates to that topic, please indicate then and not earlier than the topic comes up. So the topics are transport, policing and safety, air quality and the environment, housing, London's economic recovery, and anything else that we've not already covered. If you pre-register to watch the event at home, you will be able to submit questions throughout the evening. This is for people online. Please note that the chat is for questions only and comments will not be published. Try to ask your questions early to avoid them being missed. That's for the online people. And don't forget to like each other's questions. For each topic, we will begin with 2 questions from the floor, and then I'll give a question from the online audience. If we have time for additional questions, they will be taken from the audience live. I would also like to remind you, please, to keep your questions short and concise. But I'm also saying to the other guys who tend to be a bit longer, Mr. Mayor and my colleagues on the Assembly, if you can also keep your answers short, please, we can then fit more questions in. Thank you. Please listen to questions and answers with respect and dignity, and please, we want no heckling and no disruption. For those of you with electronic devices, which is probably virtually everybody in the room now, I should think, please remember to put your phones on silent. I'll just double check mine is actually. Yep, good. So now what I would like to do is to invite the Chair of the London Assembly to give you a few introductory words. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. As Chair of the London Assembly, I'd like to welcome you to People's Question Time here in Redbridge. It's wonderful to be joined by many of you this evening, both here at St. James Hawkley Hall and online. The London Assembly is the voice of London. There are 25 members, elected at the same time as the Mayor to scrutinise his plans and hold him to account in order to improve the lives of Londoners. This year, the Assembly has been focusing on 5 key priorities in its work. 1, cost of living. We know the cost of living is at the forefront of the minds. We've set up a cost of living working group to ensure the issue is a focal point of the Assembly this year. The Economy Committee is also currently investigating food insecurity in the capital, while Fire, Resilience and Emergency Planning Committee has discussed how rising energy costs are leading to more house fires as people are turning to using alternative fuels to heat their homes. Number 2, policing in London. Following the appointment of the new Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, we're looking at how the trust and confidence of Londoners can be won by the police. Recovery from COVID-19. As the city continues to recover from COVID-19, the Health Committee is considering how Londoners live a healthy lifestyle, both in terms of diet and exercise, whereas Transport Committee members will be looking at how Transport for London fares form following the pandemic. Climate change is another theme throughout the Assembly work this year. The Environment Committee is looking at how the city transitions to a greener economy, and the Transport Committee is examining proposals for London-wide ultra-low zone emissions expansion and road charging. Older Londoners, we know the challenges facing the capital this year will be particularly hard for older Londoners, so there will be a focus on issues particularly affecting them throughout our work. You can keep up with the work of the London Assembly by following the Twitter @London Assembly and watching our meetings in person at City Hall and on YouTube. We will continue to work hard to investigate and champion issues that matter to you. And I want to thank the Redbridge Council for allowing us to come on their turf today and for the hospitality they've shown us. And I'm glad that the Deputy Leader of Redbridge, Cam Rye, has been able to join us this evening. And now back to the task at hand. We do hope that we are all of service to you and that we are here to be accountable to you. So thank you for joining us tonight, and we very much look forward to answering your questions this evening. Back to the chair, Keith.
Thank you, Dr. Onka Sohata. Right, so now we are just about to ask questions, but before we do that, I'd like to invite to the dais the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan.
Well, look, good evening, everyone. It's fantastic to be here tonight and to have the opportunity to speak at this historic venue, Sir James Hawkey Hall. And as we can see from the portrait on the wall, this was opened by our great wartime Prime Minister, Sir Winston Churchill. Can I tell you how lovely it is to see a packed hall tonight with standing room only at the back? And I particularly want to say a big thank you to the Deputy Leader of Redbridge Council, as has just been said, Cam Rye, the Cabinet Member for Crime and Safety, and also the Leader of neighbouring Waltham Forest, Councillor Grace Williams, who's with us today as well. Look, I'm going to keep my opening statement brief, because as the title of the event suggests, this is People's Question Time. It's about you, not me. It's about listening. It's about talking about the issues that matter most to you and answering, of course, your questions. Since my election, we've taken some huge strides on the things that matter to you on behalf of Londoners. We're building record numbers of genuinely affordable homes, including more council homes than at any time since the 1970s. We're making enormous progress cleaning up London's air, cutting toxic pollution by half in central London. We're making transport around our city greener and more affordable for millions of commuters. We're investing record amounts in tackling violent crime and in providing positive opportunities for young people. We're skilling up Londoners with an offer of free training to anyone who is unemployed or in low-paid work. We've doubled the funding to address homelessness. We're quadrupling the number of employers paying the London living wage. And we're helping London get back on its feet after the pandemic by supporting businesses and bringing jobs, investment and tourism back into our city. This is a record of progress and delivery, and it's one I'm incredibly proud of. But I'm also acutely aware that with inflation soaring, with rents spiralling, and a vicious cost of living crisis, life is getting harder, not easier, for so many Londoners. Londoners choosing between heating and eating. Londoners skipping meals so their children can eat. Londoners taking on 2, sometimes 3 jobs and still needing to use food banks. It's these Londoners who are at the forefront of my mind as I continue to work tirelessly day in and day out to build a better London for everyone. A London where no one is left behind. A London that is fairer, safer, greener and more prosperous for all of its communities. And a London where everyone gets a helping hand they need to fulfill their potential. Let me end by saying this. We've taken some big steps in the right direction, but there's still so much more to do. So let's resolve as Londoners and as a city to make sure that we continue moving forwards together. I'm really looking forward to answering your questions tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So it's now time for questions. We're going to start with transport. Our first topic will be for the next 18 minutes. I will take the questions in threes, as has been explained earlier. First 2 questions will be from the floor, and then there will be 1 from the internet, which I'll take from my device here. And if we have time, we will try and get some more questions in. So let me just have a look. The first question, we've got the lady in the cream by number 6, please. Number 6.
My question concerns the new cycle lanes. As a severely visually impaired person, and I find it difficult to travel on the bus because when I get off the bus, I'm getting off in a cycle lane, and it's not safe. What do you plan to build more or to redesign them, because it just is not safe for visually impaired people? That's all.
Right, second question. I'll ask the man with the red flashing light, if that's okay. Number 4, by you, number 4.
Thanks for coming here, all of you. Mine's TfL and red traffic lights for pedestrians. Nearly every set of crossroad traffic lights have an all red phase for pedestrians, even when no one has pressed a crossing ped button. All traffic stops and increases pollution of all types. Why? Especially late at night when no pedestrians are around, when many cars run the red lights, and I've seen it happen frequently in our main roads in this area. Why? You control the computers that run the traffic lights. Please run them via the red buttons that people press on normal pedestrian crossings, not stopping all the flow of traffic, creating pollution, etc. And whilst you're at it, will you please soundproof the 10-lane highway called the A406 where it passes through our area? Thank you.
Right, thank you. The third question I have here from online, it's from a young man in Barking and Dagenham. After 66% of ULEZ expansion consultation respondents rejected ULEZ expansion plans, will you cancel the expansion? So, Mr. Mayor, over to you.
Thank you for all the questions. So the first one in relation to the lady in the third row who's visually impaired and is troubled by the cycle lane. So when there is a cycle lane installed by TfL, so there are cycle lanes installed by councils and some installed by TfL. What's really important is that those who are visually impaired are properly consulted, and what needs to happen before a cycle lane goes in is an impact assessment is done, because we want to make sure that visually impaired people aren't being disadvantaged. What I can do at the end of the meeting is make sure, if you stay where you are when the meeting ends, I'll make sure one of my team comes to speak to you to find out which cycle lanes in particular locally are a source of concern, and we can look into any particular issues in relation to that impact assessment work not being done. One of the things we've sought to do in City Hall over the last 6 years is to make sure public transport is for everybody, including those who are disabled, with more step-free access, with more help at bus stops and so forth. So if it's an issue with cycle lanes causing problems for visually impaired people, we need to address that. So if you wouldn't mind staying where you are at the end, I promise somebody will come and speak to you and take your details down. The gentleman at the question at the back in relation to traffic lights, we do have smart traffic lights now, you're spot on. In relation to responding to some parts of the city during the daytime, there are lots of pedestrians who use those traffic lights to cross the road. Other parts of the city, fewer pedestrians, and we have smarter traffic lights in those parts of the city where there are more pedestrians, and we can make sure that traffic lights have traffic flowing in other parts of the cities. Just to remind you, only about 5% of the roads do we control. The other are council controlled. So again, Keith Prince, who's the chair of tonight, if you email Keith, he'll let me know if there's any particular issues in Redbridge and Havering, which is the area Keith represents, and we can make sure TfL or the respective councils, Redbridge and Havering, look at those particular traffic lights. In relation to the question about ULEZ consultation, I've not seen the report yet in relation to the responses, so I'm not sure where those numbers come from in relation to those who've responded. What happened is, later on, either this month or next month, I'll be receiving a report from independent consultants TfL has used who analyse the responses to the ULEZ consultation. So there'll be an independent analysis of the consultation, there'll be an integrated impact assessment, and there'll be other material. That comes to me, and I make my decision. What I'm not able to do is predetermine the outcome or to give a running commentary on media reports about responses. But TfL do take consultations very seriously. They've been doing them for more than 22 years, and they're quite expert at doing them.
Sorry, yeah, we can't take...
On the A406 soundproofing, I'm not on top of that issue. Again, I'll speak to Keith, who knows the issue very well. And Keith, I'm happy to speak to you about A406 soundproofing.
Will do. It's lovely.
Apologies.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you. All right, so very quickly, I'm going to call two Assembly members have indicated. Firstly, I'm going to call Assembly Member Caroline Pidgeon, if you can make it quick and sharp and short.
Thank you very much. I'm Caroline Pidgeon. I'm a Liberal Democrat London Assembly member. And I think it's really important, picking up the point about cycle lanes, that when we design any infrastructure in the community, it's got to be with the whole community to make sure it works for everyone. And too often things are designed without looking at everyone in the community. And we do need to make sure that the voice of disabled people, visually impaired people, is at the table. And I think that's really important going forward. And that's for the boroughs as well as TfL. In terms of the point about traffic lights, actually TfL controls every traffic light in London because they run it for the boroughs. So it is something TfL can deal with, and if you want to email me, I'm happy to pick that up with TfL for you. But I want to particularly point and make my point about the ultra-low emission zone, because it's really important that we clean up the air in London, and that means every bit of London. Everyone should have the right to breathe clean air. But as a Liberal Democrat, and in our response to the Mayor's consultation, we felt we needed to see a far more detailed and more comprehensive scrappage scheme, and to look at encouraging people to use public transport if they are to give up their vehicle. But we also said we need to give people more time to convert to cleaner vehicles. And actually the idea this could come in next year, we feel, is too soon. But also, we need to make sure that there is something for disabled people who have specialist vehicles often, who may not be able to change over to a cleaner vehicle more easily. We wanted to see far more in that. And we hope later in the year, when the Mayor responds to this and we actually see the detail of the consultation, that we can see a good response to those points to make sure we can clean up the air, but bring Londoners with us.
Thank you. As the Mayor rightly said, though, of course, if you do live in Redbridge or in Havering, then please feel free to contact me, as I'm your representative for the area. And that goes for any subject relating to the Mayor of London or any of the partners and family within the London Assembly. So also I saw Assembly Member Nick Rogers.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Nick Rogers. I'm the Conservative member for Hounslow, Richmond and Kingston. In the Mayor's opening remarks, he made much of the cost of living crisis. He said that it was getting harder, not easier for Londoners.
Sorry, I don't want to be rude, Nick, but we're talking about transport. So
absolutely, and I'm making that point. He said that struggling Londoners were at the forefront of his mind, yet it's against that backdrop that he is planning on bringing in the ultra-low emission zone to the whole of London. That's his proposal. That would mean people paying £12.50 per day to drive if you don't have a compliant vehicle, or spending thousands of pounds to upgrade those vehicles. Now, this is going to have a significant impact on the financial well-being of people across the whole of outer London. It's going to hit lower-income Londoners. It's going to hit disabled Londoners. For many small businesses, it's going to be game over because commercially, ULEZ-compliant commercial vehicles are quite hard to come by. And this is against the backdrop of a poorer public transport landscape in outer London than inner London, and also all for what will be a negligible impact on air quality. We are not at all surprised that leaked figures show that 66% of respondents to the consultation want the plans to be scrapped, and we know that the Mayor could give reassurance to those people who are worried about the cost of living crisis and are worried about the idea of having to spend thousands of pounds on a new car. The Mayor could give reassurance to those people right now by cancelling those plans. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you, Assembly members and Mayor, because they were very quick questions. We've got time for another question, so if somebody could indicate. If I go to that gentleman over there, number 6, you can pick him up, please.
I'm Abra Khan. I live in Redbridge, which is IG4. One of the biggest issues we have is the Redbridge roundabout, which you've promised previously multiple times to look at, and it's never been fixed. Now, recently, there was a hotel on the corner, I think it was formerly Premier Inn, went for sale. That was an ideal location for Redbridge Station to be moved along and the roundabout to be made bigger. Are you actually doing anything to resolve those traffic around that roundabout and to relieve the congestion? Additionally, on the same roundabout, Redbridge Lane East has an illegal yellow box junction. I know it's illegal because I've had tickets that have been removed by court orders when you appeal, who have confirmed it's illegal, but Redbridge have ignored the demands to move the junction along where it should be. It should be in line with the junction. Would you join me in asking Redbridge to remove those illegal tickets that they issue for that roundabout?
Mr. Mayor, the questions are all to you. We're all here to listen to you, Mr. Mayor.
So, sorry, Kev, I thought you were doing rounds of 3.
I beg your pardon?
I thought you were doing rounds of 3.
No, we only got time for one more.
Sure. Let me do both your questions. So, in relation to Redbridge roundabout, so we've applied to DFT for capital funds because a lot of these projects are capital extensive. So we've put a number of bids to DFT in relation to improvements to capital infrastructure in London. They were paused because of the pandemic, and so later in this year we will be applying for more capital funds. What I'll do is make sure there's another roundabout scheme that Keith's been working with me on in relation to Redbridge roundabout. Yeah. So we'll make sure we speak to the scheme that we've been working on and the point you make in relation to the junction box as well. In relation to the junction box, we can kill two birds with one stone. So what I'll do is Keith Prince and I have been working with the DFT. They've approved nominally doing something around the roundabout. We haven't got the detail yet, and they've not given us a green light when we'll get the funds. So what I can do, again, if you give Keith your details afterwards, we'll make sure in the loop, and you can let other colleagues know locally who are interested in that. But if we don't get the money from DFT, we can't do it with TfL funds. But fingers crossed, with the support from DFT, we could make some improvements, which improve the quality of life of residents locally, but also improve the quality of air as well.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. We'll hold you to that. Thank you. Good. Well, that's all been worthwhile coming tonight. Thank you very much. We've got no. All right. We can actually squeeze in one more question, I think. All right. We've got. There's a chap at the back with white hair. Is it? Yeah, that guy there. Eh? Pardon?
Right.
My question is concerning LTN, cycle lanes and road closures. Okay, now, we know that you are financing a lot of the councils. For example, we've seen Freedom of Information Acts from Islington Borough Council where you've given £1.2 million. Also, Hackney Borough Council has boasted about getting finance from you to close down Stutton and Church Street. Now, when they do these consultations, okay, via Freedom of Information Acts, with Hackney Borough Council, where are we? Hackney Borough Council, in answer to their Freedom of Information Act, said they consulted 4 groups about LTNs. Street Scene, which is run by Hackney Borough Council, Travel Watch, which is not yet answered, and I've got the wrong glasses on, hang on. Age Concern UK, which hasn't answered an FOI, and Disability Backup, which ceased to exist in 2015. This consultation was taken back in 2019. Right, so do you think this is the correct way to hold a consultation? And will you do anything to Hackney Borough Council about it? Because these consultations, which in effect are rubbish, they're affecting businesses and people getting about. Also, I want to know why is it now, when I do a journey, it's taking me longer, I'm using more petrol because of these LTNs and road closures.
Should I do
Mr.
that one
Mayor,
first,
yeah.
Keith?
Yeah, please, Mr. Mayor, if you wouldn't mind.
So, look, LTNs, low traffic neighbourhoods, are schemes that councils put forward. We've got I'm sorry? Well, no, the DFT finances.
Sorry, my friend. You know, we gave you the floor to ask your question. It's not. No, look, listen to me. It's not running chat. Okay, you have to listen to what the mayor has to say, and please, don't interrupt him. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So councils have low traffic neighbourhoods, and the Department for Transport, the DFT, gives councils funds to have the LTNs. And what the government said to councils is unless you do an LTN by a certain date, you can't apply for the funds. So many councils brought in LTNs speedily. What councils are doing, though, before they become permanent, they're probably consulting with residents. I'm not familiar with the particular LTN you are talking about. We've got many LTNs across London. What's important, though, is before a scheme becomes permanent, the council does consult, and councils like Hackney, who are excellent councils, do consult before a scheme is made permanent.
Okay, thank you. We have got 1 minute left, so Assembly Member Emma Best has indicated. Would you like
Thank you very much, and good evening, people. I'll try and be about 20 seconds. On that point about Redbridge Roundabout, we all know in this room this is one of the most unsafe roundabouts in London. Not only that, but the way it's set out causes a huge amount of pollution. Now, the Mayor talks about a grant from DFT. The ULS expansion to Greater London will be £250 million. So how about we start tackling these massive road issues and reduce pollution and help people and get this moving, and don't expand the ULEZ and penalise the poorest people in our communities.
Right, thank you. Thank you. So that's the end of this section. If you didn't get the chance to ask your question, you can go online and ask the Mayor directly, or of course you can contact me as your London Assembly member and I'll make sure that your question is asked. So, moving on to policing and safety. Again, we have 18 minutes. I will, on the first instance, ask a round of 3 questions, 2 from the floor, 1 from online. And then if we get time, I will just ask individual questions, and depending on how much time we get left, depends on how many more questions we can ask. So, it is about community safety, policing, and the London Fire Brigade. So, I'd like to ask for people from the floor. Can I ask the young lady in grey, please? Number 5.
Mr. Mayor, why is knife crime increasing so much? Why it's not dealt? What are you doing to reduce it?
Thank you. Next question. I'm going to have to ask this gentleman here with the white beard and the grey jacket. number 6, right by you. Yep.
Paul Samuels, co-chair of Redbridge Citizens, part of Citizens UK. We are looking forward to a collaboration with Redbridge Council in the next few months to promote community cohesion and for the reduction of street and hate crime together with safety of our young people. What positive steps can London Assembly take to facilitate, support and enable that collaboration?
Right, the online question is, the tragic murder of Zara Alina was a harrowing event for many in the borough of Redbridge. How are you acting to eradicate violence against women and girls throughout London? And that is from a Redbridge resident. Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Keith. I'll take each question in turn. Firstly, thank you for your question about knife crimes. So, serious youth violence, including knife crime, began going up in around 2013 across the country, including London. And without wishing to excuse criminality, we shouldn't excuse criminality. We should try and understand it and explain it. And there is a direct link between deprivation, poverty, alienation, lack of opportunities, and an increase in particular with youth violence, including knife crime. So what we've done in London is we've had in the face of massive cuts in our police numbers in the last 12 years, massive cuts in youth clubs closing down, massive cuts to council services, what we've tried to do from City Hall is invest in both the police, so we have invested record sums in the police, and that's meant more than 1,300 additional police officers, costing about £1 billion, plus invested in young people, reopening youth clubs, having after-school clubs, having clubs at the weekend and in school holidays. It's no consolation if you're the victim of crime to know that we're bucking the national trend, because since 2016, youth violence has gone down, knife crime has gone down, knife crime with injuries gone down, where the victims below 25 has gone down, because it's no consolation, because if you're the victim of crime, you're 100% the victim of crime. So what we're doing in the context of, in particular, recent incidents in London, last weekend was awful, really was awful, the last 7 days have been awful, is the police have targeted projects taking place, operations, as Autumn Nights are with us now, to make sure they tackle organised crime as well as criminal gangs as well. And we're also trying to persuade the government to invest in more policing. We're about 1,500 police officers short because our population's got up. What we don't want as well is more cuts in council services, because the budget in 2 weeks' time could be further cuts in council services, which would mean the enforcement hub, Redbridge, could close down and the youth clubs could go down. But it is an issue that we've got to stay on top of, and we are bucking the national trend in London, though. Other parts of the country have seen a much bigger increase and not seen the reduction we're seeing in London. That's why it's really important that City Hall works with communities and with the police to bear down on this really important issue. And the phrase I use is to be tough on crime, investing in the police, and tough on the causes of crime by supporting our young people, keeping them constructive and busy rather than involved in criminality. And we have England's first violence reduction unit that's working. In fact, a big issue in our city. All forms of hate crime have gone up across the country. And there's two big issues in relation to hate crime. Firstly is supporting vulnerable communities who can be susceptible to being radicalised and groomed. And secondly, to tackle at source those who get involved in hate crime while you're supporting the victims of hate crime. So in City Hall, we have something called the Shared Endeavour Fund. And what we do is we invest in communities in relation to, particularly those communities that are at the coalface of facing the hatred. Anti-Semitic crime has gone up. Islamophobic crime has gone up. Crimes against the LGBTQ plus community has gone up. And I'll come on shortly to violence against women and girls. And that's why it's really important that we work with communities in relation to hate crime, which, by the way, there's a link between the rise of nativist populist movements politicians around the world saying things that are either racist or sexist or homophobic, and there being an increase in hate crime. That's why it's really important that citizens are working with communities to address the issue of hate crime. The question, Keith, in relation to Zara Alina, the online question, is one that really got to the fore in the public's attention last year, but it's one we've been addressing for some time from City Hall. We've had in London a number of high-profile murders of women. Of course, Sarah Everard, Bieber and Nicole, Sabina Nessa, and you mentioned Zara Alina. And we've got to be honest about this. You know, this hatred against women that leads to violence starts at an age where people have attitudes towards girls which can be just misogynistic, and they can turn into abuse, which can turn into violence, which can turn into murder. That's why I think we're going to have a whole society approach. It's got to start in the schools. We're going to be teaching our boys about the importance of respecting girls, making sure we have healthy relationship education at school. If you have, and you're a bloke, a friend who's acting inappropriately, have a word with your mate. You might think it's banter. That's not how it's received by a woman or a girl. We've got to make sure that the police have the support they need in relation to tackling misogynistic crime. I think misogyny should be a hate crime. I think it's really important to give the police the support they need, but also, and the Commission's been really good at this, dealing with issues within the police service in relation to issues around misogyny and sexism. Violence against women and girls across our country has gone up every 3 days. Every 3 days across England, Wales and Scotland, a woman is murdered by a man. So we can't pretend this is an issue we're going to grapple with and solve overnight. But I'm confident with this Commissioner, with the work of communities across London, we can make progress to first reduce violence against women and girls and then to eliminate it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Right, we have got time, so I am going to ask a couple of Assembly members. 3 have indicated, but I'm going to call 2 at this moment. I'm going to ask another round of 3, and then I'll get the other Assembly member in at the end. So can I ask Assembly Member Caroline Russell first?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for these very, very important questions. So my first I'll turn to the person wearing grey here at the front who raised the issue of knife crime. And knife violence is something that affects people all across our city. There was a fatal knife incident in the local park where I live in Islington in the summer, and you know, the impact and the ripples from these events is absolutely shocking. One of the things that helps to reduce the likelihood that people will carry a knife in the first place is reducing the number of images of knives that are shared on social media. One of the things I've been campaigning on is to get the Metropolitan Police to stop showing pictures of very scary, very big blades on their social media accounts, on their Twitter accounts. Now, I did some research a year ago which showed that they had shared over 2,000 images of knives on their social media. I did the same research again just recently, and they cut the number of knives they were sharing by 1,000. Now, this is really important. They need to show no images of knives on their social media, because what young people say is that they feel more frightened and that it makes them more likely to carry a knife. There's been a lot of research, there's been academic research that agrees that it's better not to share these images on social media. The London Assembly all agreed with me when I put a motion to them that we shouldn't be sharing images of knives and the police shouldn't share images of knives on social media. And the Mayor's Violence Reduction Unit, the young people working there, have now got some research out, and we're waiting for that research to be published. But hopefully the Met will stop sharing these images. If you want to contact your police here in Redbridge, they're actually one of the boroughs where there were more images shared of knives on their social media, and I think there are good ways that the Metropolitan Police can show the good work they're doing to try and reduce knife harm without actually putting those images on their social media accounts.
Right, thank you. Assembly Member, you've had a good 2 minutes there. Thank you. I'm going to look to Assembly Member Sean Bailey now.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Assembly Member Sean Bailey. Just to say, I sometimes think the Mayor hasn't had a full appreciation of what drives street crime in London. His approach to stop and search has led to the deadliest year we've ever had, 2021, with 30 teenagers being stabbed to death in London. We've seen no plan, no cohesive plan of how we're going to remove weapons from the streets of London, because of course the more weapons they are, the more situations, incidences we're likely to have. If you take the VRU, it's a good innovation. That's a violence reduction unit. It's a good innovation that's being managed poorly. It has huge sums of money. It regularly has large underspends. They can give you no real stats on the effectiveness of any of the work they're doing, and I think the Mayor needs to get a grip of them, because they could be a real good way to help London become safer. When you talk about partnerships in Redbridge, they could be one of the things from City Hall that you partner with. So I suggest you write to the Mayor and ask, is that possible at all? Can they fund something? Can they run some kind of project in your area? And I just have to end by saying, Assembly Member Caroline Russell is so right. The weapons we see displayed on social media drive how young people think about these things, and then they do different things to defend themselves. We must talk differently about street crime, and particularly knives.
Right, thank you. I'm going to try and squeeze in 3 questions if I can. Number 2, by you, there's a man there with a white paper in his hand. Number 2.
Okay, thank you. One of the questions my question would be, one of the best ways to reduce crime is to have more police. And I think considering the areas that are under your control, Mr. Mayor, of the police numbers budgeted by you, how many vacancies are there in Redbridge? Can you guarantee these are filled immediately, and that the SNT teams in each ward are fully up to strength and establishment, which they are not at the moment in the west of the borough, certainly around these wards around here?
Okay, thank you. Number 6, no, actually number 4, can you come forward and pick up the young lady on the end in the cream top?
I'll speak on her behalf. Hello, Mr. Khan. We've met before. We met earlier at the State of London debate. Sorry, I've got my right here. Disproportionate investigations against black police officers is still a thing. Since the Baroness Casey review has been revealed severe concerns regarding disproportionality against black officers and deemed the internal investigation not fit for purpose. Even I, since becoming vocal about this, are now under investigation. In light of such glaring evidence of discrimination, I understand what you've done so far, but what will you do now to ensure that the Metropolitan Police are accountable and to safeguard black police officers when they come forward?
Right. Number 5, can you, number 5? Hello, number 5, that's you. Can you pick up the young lady with the white and blue hoops there, please? White and blue hoops, sorry, it's that lady there, sorry. I didn't see the other one indicate, she didn't indicate. The woman did the African.
I just want the comments that the chap right at the back at the end of the head down. One of the ways that you can stop people dying, whatever colour you are, is to invest in health interventions on the streets. And there's a huge amount of need, and I know that where I work, they're sort of wanting money from Barts to have projects going out teaching how to stop bleeding from knife injury and therefore death, which really doesn't matter what colour you are, you're still going to bleed out if you're knifed. But they haven't got the money to invest in people, to train them to go to the colleges and walk the streets. So if you've got pots of money, you need to give it to them.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you.
So let me,
Mr. Mayor? Yeah.
So let me deal with all the questions. What are the problems? When I listen to people like, you referred to him, the chap at the end, we call him Sean Bailey, is he has, no, it's fine. I can understand.
Sorry.
Sorry,
we can't have a discussion.
He has got a forgettable name.
Sorry. Sorry,
look, for the last...
Sorry, Mr Mayor, 1 minute. Sorry, we're not having a cross discussion here, okay? If I'm calling people, I do expect them to respect the rules, which is that they ask the question, then they listen to what the Mayor's got to say. I'm not having an ongoing conversation. Okay, thank you. Mr Mayor.
What Sean Bailey doesn't tell you is for the last 12 years we've had massive cuts. Right? You can't escape the fact we've had 12 years of austerity. So for the first time in memory, we had fewer than 30,000 police officers in a city bigger than 9 million. And that's one of the reasons why crime went up. But also, we had youth clubs closing down. And so when people like Mr. Bailey talk about who's to blame, they forget from the equation the consequences of those cuts. The reason why we're able to have more police officers, the reason why we're able to talk about, in his words, pots of money, is investment from City Hall, which simply can't fill the massive cuts left by central government. We're doing our best. So in answer to the question from the gentleman about police numbers in this borough, let me tell you that police numbers in this borough went down to, in the BCU, 1,200. 1,200 from 1,350 because of their cuts. Because of our investment, it's now gone from 1,200 to more than 1,600 because of investment from City Hall, and they voted against our budget, by the way. And that means, in answer to the question, I can reassure you, we have 1,600 officers in this BCU. That includes 1,583 police officers, 39 police staff, 57 police community support officers, and 118 specials in the face of government cuts as a consequence of the investment we made. And as a consequence of the work of the VRU in Redbridge alone, I can list you 6 projects that are improving the life chances of young people. Around CBT, you mentioned health interventions, CBT, cognitive behaviour therapy, helping young people turn their lives around, working with parents, working with young people to have mentors, really important role models. And you're right, we've got to work with health practitioners. So we are working with health practitioners, giving them youth workers in A&Es to make sure they use that reachable, teachable moment to turn lives around. So we are doing what we can from City Hall, but it's felt over the last 12 years like we have one hand tied behind our back because of massive cuts from central government. That's why we've got to lobby the government. There's a budget in 2 weeks' time. What we can't have after 12 years of cuts is a further 2 years of further cuts with Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt.
Right. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Right. And can I tell the gentleman at the back, my colleague from the Black Police Association, I'm glad you welcome the work of Louise Casey. You will appreciate how groundbreaking it was that somebody else was confirming and validating what you said to me at the State of London debate about disproportionality in relation to misconduct hearings. So Dame Louise Casey is working on her final report. And if you haven't already spoken to, I think you have spoken to Dame Louise Casey, I'd really encourage you to speak to her again, because the interim report came out 2 weeks ago, which was a sober read, right? Because what it did was it confirmed that in relation to black officers, when it comes to misconduct allegations, there is disproportionality. It also confirmed that in relation to other officers, there were repeat complaints made. One officer, 11 complaints made, white officer, I hasten to add, and no action taken. And that's why it's really important that Dame Louise Casey gets on and does her work. But also we have a reforming commissioner that understands you can't get less crime unless there are higher standards and more trust and confidence as well. And I'd encourage you, if you haven't already done so, to meet Sir Mark Rowley and Interim Deputy Commissioner Lynn Owens, who are really keen to make sure that we have a police service that looks more like our city, but also that makes sure that the culture and systems change so people like you and colleagues in the BPA don't feel as if it's one rule for you and one rule for white officers.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We are out of time, actually, but I do feel obliged to call a couple of Assembly members, so please be very, very quick. Assembly Member Susan Hall first, please.
Thank you. I will be quick. And just to make sure that you all do know that Mayor Khan is actually the Police and Crime Commissioner in London, therefore in charge of policing in London. Now, you wouldn't know that if you listened to him, because he sits and blames the government for absolutely everything. mustn't forget, he also has a £19 billion budget, and he didn't mention that London is getting an extra 4,500 officers thanks to the government. But no, it's all thanks to City Hall. Whenever he thinks something good's happening, he'll take credit for it, whether he should or not, and often he should not. And when anything goes wrong, he blames the government. Just to let you know that confidence in the Metropolitan Police has been falling since 2017, when it was 69%, and in March it had fallen to 49%. This is under this mayor. The Metropolitan Police has also been put under special measures under this mayor. I'll leave it at that. If I could sit here and tell you all the things he does wrong, but we'd be here all night.
Right, sorry. I have to warn you, we're not having, no, sorry, we're out of time. We cannot have heckling, whether you agree with what's being said or whether you disagree with what's being said. It's all very well to applaud, but there's no heckling. And I have to warn people that those people who wish to continue heckling at a point, if you try me too much, we will have you removed. So just be in mind of that, follow that, please. Right, in the interest of balance, and I'm very sorry, we are well over time, but I have agreed that Assembly Member Desai can say something very quickly.
Well, where do I start? But look, I want to talk about a lot of things, but time doesn't permit me. Unmesh Desai, City and East London Assembly Member. Stop and search. There's nothing wrong with stop and search as long as it's done proportionately, properly, fairly, and sensitively. And let me tell you, who the biggest ambassadors, advocates of stop and search are, is the families of those who have lost their loved ones. Safer neighbourhood teams, the Commissioner came before the police with assurance that he firmly believed in a strengthened neighbourhood policing model. Police numbers, again, I could go on and on. Susan Hall talks about 4,500. Let me say this. Austerity cuts over the last decade of £1 billion meant that we lost thousands of police officers over the last 10 years. When I came to City Hall in 2016, the Met was in danger of dropping to an all-time low of 27,000. Due to the mayor's budgetary processes, things were stabilized, and we're now around 34,000 police officers on our streets. I'll just make two more points. Hate crime is growing across all categories in London. And this is where I think is so important. Campaigning, education, enforcement. The police committee did a major report when I was chair. But the language of politicians is so important. When you use words like people invading this country, that sends out the wrong message and encourages hate on our streets. Politicians should be much more restrained and be careful in the language that they use. And let me finish on a bit of good news for Redbridge residents. The Met suffered £1 billion curse over the last 10 years. Redbridge Council has had its budget cut by some £230 million over the last decade. In spite of that, they've introduced enforcement hubs in Ilford and Hainault, and the good news is this: a police deployment hub is soon coming to Woodford, very, very soon. That means that you'll be able to engage with your local police and not go down to Ilford. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, we are well over time, and we are running late now, but I thought in the interest of balance, I had to answer that. Okay, so we're going to move now on to air quality and the environment. We probably won't get 18 minutes out of this, but if I could see some indications, please. There's number 6 by you, is a young lady in red. Behind you, in red. Thank you. See what I can do.
Mr Mayor, Assembly members, thank you very much for joining us here tonight in Redbridge. My name's Chanel, I live in Aldersbrook, and I'm really concerned about air pollution, which is significantly high in Redbridge. What are the plans to improve air quality and reduce particulate matter?
Okay, next question is a young lady over there with blue and white paper in her hand, number 1. If you can pick her up, please. You need the microphone, I'm afraid.
Thank you very much, Chair. My name's Suzanne Nolan, and I was a councillor for many years. Mr Mayor, in 2016, you promised to plant 2 million trees by 2020. Do you think you've done enough to plant more trees since becoming mayor? Do you think I'll say it again, I'm sorry. In 2016, you promised to plant 2 million trees by 2020. Do you think you've done enough to plant those trees since you became mayor? And will you pledge to implement an extensive tree planting programme in future, as this is the best way to improve air quality, rather than extending the ULEZ, which has a minimal impact and will have a dire consequence for vulnerable people in this ward and this borough, Mr. Mayor? Thank you.
Thank you. Right, I've got an online question. That will be the end of the three, and then if we get time, I'll come back and ask them more from the floor. The online question is, what will the Mayor do to make sure no new playgrounds or outdoor gyms are built adjacent to major roads and motorways? And what measures will he put in place to protect hedgerows along busy roads, which help to protect residents from air pollution? Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Keith. Thanks for all the questions. Chanel, just for those colleagues that aren't aware about how dangerous the air in our city is, every year there are more than 4,000 premature deaths because of the air pollution. You can't see it. It's particulate matter, nitrogen dioxide, so more than 4,000 premature deaths. There are children with stunted lungs forever because of the poison in our air. And there are adults with a whole host of health issues, from asthma to cancer, from dementia to heart disease. Now, in central London, we introduced the world's first ultra-low emission zone. And the Conservatives on the Assembly opposed that. And many people in central London opposed that. We consulted and we explained to them the health benefits. And we have, in a short space of time, reduced by 50% the amount of poison in the air in central London. That's saving lives and helping health of those people in central London. We then expanded it to inner London, up to the north and south circular, and saw a reduction of a further 20% of nitrogen dioxide. That means 4 million people breathe in cleaner air. And I think clean air is a human right. Everyone should benefit from clean air, not just those that live in central and inner London. But here's the crux of the matter. It's the poorest Londoners, least likely to own a car, who suffer the worst consequences. They're breathing in the poison that polluting cars are putting out. It's black, Asian, minority ethnic Londoners who are more likely to suffer the worst consequences of air pollution. It's in deprived communities. And so what we're doing is,
my friend in the blue coat, you're going to have to stop heckling. Otherwise, I'll have to ask you to leave. I mean, it is amusing, I have to admit. It is amusing, but, well, you are.
It's not. I'm sorry, Keith. It's not amusing. It's because black Londoners live in poorer areas where the air is worse. So it's not a laughing matter, Keith. You should take it seriously. I'm not playing to the gallery.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, right.
So the reason why black Londoners suffer worse consequences is they're in poorer areas.
Mr. Mayor, 1 minute, please. 1 minute. Look, no, my friend in blue. This is the last time. If you say one more word, I'm going to ask the stewards to have you removed, okay? All right? Fair warning, yeah? Fair warning. Right, sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Well, look, can I be clear?
Okay, all right, sorry, I'm afraid you're going to have to leave, my friend. No, you're going to have to leave, sorry. Look forward to it. No, I'll come to the questions in a minute. The Mayor is still answering the question. The Mayor... Right, if you can sit down, and again, I'll give you the same warning, my friend. If you don't desist, you will be removed as well. Thank you. I have asked questions from the back. Sorry, Mr. Mayor, the floor is yours.
So the reason why black Londoners are more likely to die prematurely from air pollution is they live in poorer parts of London, and they're also least likely to own a car. So for me, it's an issue of social justice and racial justice, as well as improving the air in our city. In relation to the question about trees, we've planted more trees in the first 6 years of me being mayor than the previous mayor did in the last 8 years and the one before him in the 8 years before then. We've planted more than 500,000 trees since I became mayor, including in this part of London. We have a new woodland we've extended to Hanolt Forest because of the funding from City Hall, working with the Forestry Commission and others. And we're working with the royal family to extend the tree canopy as well. Planting trees by themselves is not going to improve the quality of air in London. We need to reduce the toxins coming from our vehicles, but at the same time, tackle congestion and climate change as well. In the 1950s, when politicians like Winston Churchill sought to address the great smog of our city, there were people unhappy when Winston Churchill was talking about removing the power stations from the centre of our cities. But brave politicians like Churchill said, no, we have to, because people are dying because of the power stations being in the centre of our city. Similarly, there are people dying prematurely because of the poison from pollution vehicles, and that's why the ULEZ has been so successful in central London and inner London, and that's why we're consulting on all of London benefiting from clean air. It's really important. Which goes to the third question online about playgrounds and being built next to main roads. It's a really good point, because over successive decades, schools, playgrounds, homes have been built next to roads that are poisonous because of polluting vehicles. We now have a London plan and guidance on there which says to developers, when it comes to new developments, when it comes to schools, when it comes to playgrounds, you've got to make sure you understand the responsibility you have to make sure the playgrounds and the schools and the homes aren't next to an environment that is poisonous and dangerous. So the good news to the person who emailed in is, from now onwards, we can take steps to address the issue of new playgrounds, but what we're also trying to do is, with limited funds, to green those schools to try and reduce the pollution that goes to those playgrounds. And a number of schools in Redbridge are benefiting from our policies. And the other good news in Redbridge is we've got a number of schools here who have our air quality monitors. So parents in real time can see how good or bad the air is in their schools, and the teachers then can take steps to stop children playing in the playground when the air is dangerous because of the alerts they receive from the air quality monitors.
Thank you. Okay, I've seen 3 Assembly members indicate, but I'm going to only take 2. The other one may get a chance later. First one, Assembly Member Leonie Cooper.
Thanks very much, Chair, and I'll keep it brief because I can see there's a lot of people who want to come in from the floor. In the 1950s, the Mayor has just referred to the issues with dirty air. We could see how dirty the air was. The problem now is we can't actually see it because the particles are so tiny, they're microscopic. And we have to remember, how would we feel if the water companies were allowing the water that came out of our taps, and at one point it did used to have a lot of very small microbes in it, and it made us all sick. We don't want that in the water, and it's the same thing with our air. We've cleaned up the water, and long may it stay clean, but we now need to clean up the air as well. And just on the point about trees, absolutely, planting new trees is a good thing, and we all like trees. But even better than planting new trees is protecting existing trees that are much larger, because they actually provide a lot of other benefits. They do more to clean up the air because they're bigger, but they also do a lot to address some of that. You remember how hot it was in the summer. So there's something called the urban heat island effect, and trees are amazing in many ways. They really help keep the temperatures down. So protecting existing trees, the Mayor just mentioned the London plan. There's a lot of new protections in the London plan for the existing trees as well. So that's just as important as planting new ones. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I then saw Assembly Member Hina Bakari.
Thank you, Chair. I'm the Liberal Democrat London Assembly Member, Hina Bakari, and I'm also the Chair of Economy. And the last time that we did a People's Questions Time, I talked a lot about cargo bikes. It's one of my passions. I do really believe that it's a way forward to getting to net zero by 2030. If we have a conversion to small businesses adapting rather than using vans, but using cargo bikes instead. And I'm glad to see that the Mayor of London has started to put some work towards towards this. And on the 30th of November, you can watch the London Assembly Economy meeting where we'll be doing an investigation on cargo bikes. And I'd really love to hear from you as well about your ideas on terms of cargo bikes and how we can use that as a way forward for businesses. But I also want to say that sometimes the Mayor of London and the Liberal Democrats agree on air pollution in the way forward, but there are certain times when we don't. And there is a road, the Silvertown Tunnel, that's being built. If you build more roads, you get more cars. So at the end of the day, do we really need it?
Thank you. Right, I'm going to ask 2 more questions. I've seen a gentleman at the back, a guy with a grey suit, white hair, number 7, right by you.
Mr. Mayor, it was good to hear your words about playgrounds and they shouldn't be by schools earlier. So I'm hoping you're going to agree with me and others that it's irresponsible that a new primary school with a playground beside a busy polluting road, a Goodmace High road that is so polluting, the flats adjacent to it on either side have got air filters to protect the residents up to 7 floors. So if you're facing, if it's built, parents looking down on a playground beside a busy road, and we all know that children with asthma, exercise is a trigger, so parents looking down on that playground, if their kids have got asthma, they won't have joy in their hearts. They'll be wondering about whether their child on a high pollution day will suffer an asthma attack. Keith Prince is here, Rosemary Warrington on behalf of the Green Party, Ashman Holder on behalf of the Liberal Democrats. They could see through this lunacy and they went to 10 Downing Street earlier this week on Monday to ask the Prime Minister to intervene. So I'm looking to you, Mr. Mayor, to speak out and say this playground shouldn't be beside a busy road. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Number 6, can you pick up the young lady in black, please?
Good evening, Mr. Sadiq Khan and the rest of you. Now, I'm a teacher. I work hard. I have a car, but unfortunately, it does not pass the ULEV. I simply cannot afford a new car. I rely on my car to bring home my marking, and I can actually tell you I have a lot of marking to do. So I'm just going to repeat myself. I rely on my car. I do not earn a lot of money as a teacher. Now, you extending the ULEV will not help me. All it will do is, I don't know what it will do, other than the fact that I am going to have to think very hard as to how I'm going to come up with thousands of pounds to replace my car. Now, what I'm asking is this. Could you perhaps put the expansion of the ULEV, could that not be put back for a couple of years? I don't know. Because with the cost of living, I am struggling already. It is a worry for me. It is a worry for me and my family. I have a discussion with my family. I am going to have to find money to buy another car. Something I simply cannot afford. Can I also add that other colleagues at my workplace are in the same situation as me? It is a worry. The cost of living is a worry for me and my family, and there are others as well. I am requesting for this expansion to be put on hold. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Let me do both the questions, which actually are linked in relation to the poison that those children are breathing in the playground that you referred to, sir, at the back in the grey suit. So I don't know about the school, and I'll get details from Keith Prince afterwards. But we do know when there are schools next to roads where there are polluting vehicles, that leads to particulate matter, nitrogen dioxide and nitrogen oxide going out from the polluting vehicles into the playgrounds, breathed in by children. And that's one of the reasons why we introduced the world-leading ultra-low emission zone policy in central London and in London. 97% of schools are now in areas where the area is lawful because of the ultra-low emission zone, and 90% of people live in areas where the area is now lawful because of the ultra-low emission zone. That's not to take away from the point you're making about not making sense for a school to be next to a main road, but the point being that actually the quickest way to clean the air is the ultra-low emission zone. Before I became mayor, experts said it would take 193 years to clean the air in London. Now they say we can do it by 2025. So that's why it's so important to understand the health crisis that is the motivation for the ultra emission zone. In answer to the second question from the teacher, look, I've not made my decision yet. We're going to wait and see what the response to the consultation is. But I recognise, look, teachers haven't had a decent pay rise for 12 years. You're facing inflation at 10, 11%. You're facing energy bills going up without proper control from the government. Rents going up, mortgages going up as well. And I understand the crisis people are facing. So those are some of the things I'm sure will be in the consultation responses that have been sent in. I can't prejudge what I'm going to decide. I've not predetermined the outcome. I'll receive the report from TfL, and in due course, I'll make my decision.
Right, thank you. Very quickly, Assembly Member Garrett, you indicated earlier.
Thank you. Neil Garrett, the Conservative London Assembly Member for the faraway place of Croydon and Sutton. I'm delighted to be here this evening. I wanted to make a comment actually in relation to a couple of these questions about ULEZ and about air quality. And picking up Assemblymember Cooper's point about the 1950s legislation, which was under a Conservative government. And I think air quality is often seen as a party political issue, and we're all breathing the same air. And I think it's important that we all recognise the health impacts of breathing dirty air. One of the frustrating things that I find, though, is that it's really about what people do, I think, and we sometimes get these very sloganized approach to politics. So all of us, most of us on this podium today, I made the same trip to get here from City Hall, and I came here on my Brompton and the tube, and then I get here. Some of my colleagues came by car, whereupon they then deliver a lecture about clean air. I find that a bit annoying, If they're looking nervous, I'm not going to name any of them, but they know they are. My concern with ULEZ is this. So there was a point particularly at the back about particulates, and particulates are particularly harmful. Huge report, independent impact assessment on the ULEZ said that the expansion of ULEZ to outer London, including here and including my constituency, will have zero effect on particulates. Climate change is a concern. It reports that it will have zero impact on climate change. The only form of air pollution that it will have an impact on, the expansion to outer London, is on nitrogen oxide, and that will remove about 1.5% of the nitrogen oxide in the air in outer London. So we're talking about almost homeopathic amounts of change to the air quality. And the Mayor talks about it as if it's this kind of sudden changing, from dirty air suddenly to clean air. And it really is a tiny, tiny change. And the concern that I have is that it means £250 million spent on a camera network that could be spent directly paying for people to be able to replace dirty vehicles with clean vehicles. And it means all of the people in this audience, and very many people who email us often about the cost of living burden that they're concerned about, this huge daily charge that is simply unaffordable. That's why I think it's the wrong policy in pursuit of the right objective.
Thank you. Right, we are out of time on that section. So, again, if you haven't had your question asked, please email the Mayor on the internet, or you can send me an email. The next question is housing. Again, hopefully we've got 18 minutes. I'll take the first two questions from the audience. So, gentleman there with the white, number 6 behind you in the white, gentleman with the white. I don't know what it is actually, a t-shirt? Yeah, that gentleman there, thanks.
Thank you, good evening. London has a serious housing shortage, but the response London-wide of all the London boroughs seems to be whack up high-rise buildings. In particular example, you're probably aware of the Whips Cross site, some 44 acres, not very far from here, 2/3 of which will be receiving high-rise buildings up to about 18 stories, in a landlocked site with no facilities, no car parking. Would the Mayor agree with me that we're creating a massive social problem for the future?
Thank you. Next question, I can see a young lady in khaki, is it? Over there, number 8, yeah, if you can pick her up, please. Sorry, it's yellow stripes, sorry.
Sorry. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. So housing inequality is one of the most key issues of our time. People were already incurring debt from unaffordable rents, and many people living in unsafe housing. In London, and with the increasing cost of living and related issues as a result, fuel, food, energy bills, this is only getting worse. This is exacerbated for young people and single-parent families and our most vulnerable. And you've already spoken about, Mayor, about social justice and the disproportionate impact on black and minoritized communities. Profit over people is costing lives, and Grenfell comes to mind where nearly 80 people were killed. And though nothing will ever make up for lives devastatingly lost, till now there has been no accountability. On top of this, the conditions of some of the housing, even new housing such as the estate in Walthamstow Stadium, where people were evicted and inadequately placed or not in faraway places where they're far from their local schools. And I'm going to name and shame right now, London and Quadrant, and other housing associations and HMO are not adequately ensuring that housing conditions are safe and livable at decent standards. Please could you explain, particularly now under the current economic conditions manufactured by the Tories, how housing inequality is being tackled? What defines affordable housing? What steps are being taken to support people with their rents, and steps to ensure and hold accountable housing associations? Thank you.
Thank you. The third question is from the internet, from a resident in Newham. Will you do anything to address the 600 plus people displaced from their housing in Newham? Disabled and pregnant people have been left with nowhere to live and no date of return. Saying it isn't your responsibility isn't good enough.
I missed the beginning of your question.
Yeah, sorry. Will you do anything to address the 600 plus people displaced from their housing in Newham? Disabled and pregnant people have been left with nowhere to live and no date of return. And then the person goes on saying it isn't your responsibility isn't good enough, although I do accept, Mr. Mayor, this one probably isn't your responsibility.
No, I simply don't know the case, Keith, but I'm more than happy to look into it.
Yeah, okay, we could deal with that offline then if that's okay, Mr. Mayor. Can we get the details for that one, please?
On the questions that I do know about, so the question next to number 6, look, some of these decisions come to me, so I can't give a view in advance, but in shorthand, if there is a tall building, you've got to make sure it's in the right location, you've got to make sure it's got the right design, it's got to be safe, and you've got to make sure that the local amenity is not inconvenienced by the building. So I'm not sure about the specific case you're talking about, but there are some parts of London where you should and can have tall buildings. So it depends upon the circumstances of where that building is. In some places, it's clearly inappropriate to have a tall building, but in some places it is. And so it's, you know, horses for courses. That goes to the second question, which is a really important question about Grenfell going forward and genuinely affordable housing. So when you speak to the community around Grenfell, as I do often, there are ostensibly two main things they want. One is for it to never happen again, and two is for there to be justice. And as you said, those responsible to be held to account. And what Grenfell illustrates is the systemic problems with deregulation. So in the 1980s, the then government got rid of all the rules, basically, which allowed corners to be cut and homes to be built that weren't safe. Inspections were done by them. People were marking their own homework in relation to inspections. Fire doors didn't work, no evacuation plans, and so forth, which led to 72 people losing their lives. 41% of those who died were disabled. And so it's really important to learn the lessons from the public inquiry coming. One of the recommendations the public inquiry makes is there should be a personal evacuation plan for anyone who's disabled. Unfortunately, the government's rejected that really important recommendation, so it's possible in tall buildings, disabled people will still die going forward because of the failure of the government to accept that recommendation. The bad news is in London, we have more than double the number of tall buildings than the rest of the country put together. We have more than 8,000 tall buildings, and what's even worse is the fire brigades say a number of these buildings aren't safe. The built environment isn't safe, so the stay put advice, which normally applies, can't be applied to some of these buildings. That's why your question is so important, because we have people living in homes that are literally tinderboxes, where if there was a fire, they would go up quite fast, and there's no real way to get out if you're disabled, which is why the fire brigade are really concerned about the delay in taking action. I'm hopeful, though, because Michael Gove is now back in the job he was in a while ago, and Michael Gove is the first member of the government who appears to understand the problem and wants to do something about it. And can I say, it really is unusual for me to say nice things about Tories. But I'm being heckled by one here on my left. But Michael Gove, I think, gets it, and he wants to take action in relation to this. And I've asked to meet Michael Gove with my Deputy Mayor to work together to address these issues, which is really important. But you asked a question about what is an affordable house. So when I became Mayor, the definition of an affordable home is one that is 80% of market value to rent. 80% of market value to rent was an affordable home. And so you could tick a box by allowing developers to have these 80% market value rents and say, oh, box ticked, we've got affordable homes. But nobody can afford 80% of the rent if your salary is, you know, a poorer person's salary. If you're a nurse, if you're a porter, if you're a teacher, you've got no chance of living in London. So what we did when I became Mayor is we ripped up the definition that Boris Johnson had. Our definition is one of three things that's genuinely affordable. Either a council home, and we began building last year more council homes than any year since the 1970s. It's a home where you pay a social rent. In the last year of Boris Johnson being Mayor, only three homes were begun that were social rent. Last year, more than 9,000. Or it's a home that is a London living rent, which is a third of average earnings rather than market value. So we're making progress in relation to more genuinely affordable homes, but here's the bad news. The supply of new homes that are affordable is way below the demand. So for the foreseeable future, we're still going to need lots of people living in private rented accommodation. And so what I'm saying to the government is the rents in private accommodation are so expensive, landlords increase their rents willy-nilly. What they should be doing is for the next 2 years, freezing rents in the private sector, and then allow us to have rent controls in London to give security of tenure and reduce the cost of living in London, because there are teachers, there are train drivers, there are bus drivers, there are police officers, there are firefighters who cannot afford to live in London because housing is so expensive. And so we're lobbying the government to get more resources to build more genuinely affordable homes in London. And I'm not going to apologise, it is the government's fault, because they're not investing enough in affordable housing. We need more investment in affordable housing to prevent further Grenfells happening again, and to prevent a brain drain from our city where teachers, police officers and firefighters are leaving our city because they can't afford to raise a family in London.
Thank you. Right, I'm going to use a substitute online question, which I'm going to ask you to answer then, Mr. Mayor, and then two Assembly members indicated, so I'll call them. So, Mr. Mayor, what are the solutions, steps, measures and policy made towards first-time London buyers? And that's from a friend in Barking and Dagenham.
Thanks, Keith. So a number of things we're doing to help first-time buyers. One is to reduce the cost of homes to purchase, and so we now have homes that cost, the average cost of a home, I should explain, is in London, the average cost, so if you include flats, terraced and detached, the average cost is £550,000. £550,000 is the average cost of a house in London, and most people simply can't afford to purchase one of those homes. So the two big things we're doing to help those who are first-time buyers is we're having more shared ownership homes, part rent, part mortgage, and we're making sure they're long leases rather than the short leases that people have. So more shared ownership homes, which gives you a foot into being a first-time buyer. The second thing we're doing is, because there are more London living rent homes, if you're paying a third of your earnings towards your rent, you can put money aside to be able to save up for a deposit to buy a home. And the third thing we're doing in relation to first-time buyers is first dibs. So when a home is built that costs about £350,000, for the first few weeks, only Londoners get a chance to purchase it, rather than people from outside London being able to purchase it. So the idea is it's first dibs for Londoners, which is really important. Local homes for local people.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right, so I've got three Assembly members, 1 minute each, please. And Assembly Member Andrew Boff first.
I'll be lucky if I get this out in a minute, but I'll give it a go. To address the point about tower blocks, the London Assembly's policy on this has been established. We've clearly said that you will not solve London's housing problems by building tower blocks. They are unsustainable. They are expensive to build. They are problems in terms of heating them, and they tend to offer the tiny type of flats that are not suitable for the demand in London, which overwhelmingly is for family-sized properties. Now, the mayor is often very happy, very keen to blame the government on every single opportunity when he falls short of our expectations. And yet back in 2016, he was given £4.8 billion in order to complete 116,000 affordable homes in London. And can you guess, bearing in mind he always complains that the government doesn't give him enough money, can you guess how much of that money has been unallocated to providing the homes that Londoners need? Over £500 million. Over £500 million, and yet he still goes to the government with the begging bowl and says it's all their fault. Now, the mayor often likes to say that the solution of London's housing problems is a marathon and not a sprint. Mr. Mayor, this is not a marathon. This performance is a stroll. It is not giving the kind of homes that Londoners want. Londoners want family housing. We've got to solve the problem in London of overcrowding, where 350,000 young people are being brought up in overcrowded conditions, with all the implications that that has for their future. So, Mr. Mayor, get your act together. You've got the money. Do your job.
Thank you. Right, Assembly Member Clark, if you can make it very quick, please, I'll be grateful.
I'll attempt to make it quick. I want to refer back to the question about Grenfell and affordable housing and the cost of living. I chair the Fire and Emergency Response Planning Committee, and I represent Barnet and Camden. But just to say, it's now been 5 years since the Grenfell tragedy, and we haven't moved fast enough, and reforms certainly have not gone far enough. And in London, we still have hundreds of blocks with dangerous ACM cladding and other fire safety defects. I do appreciate what the mayor is saying, and I absolutely agree. The government needs to move on this. They have had 5 years, and it's regulation that we need. It's fire safety regulation we need to keep Londoners safe and to keep people across the country safe. But the cost of living, people who live in these unsafe blocks are already paying fees, extra fees to live in these blocks. They're paying extra insurance costs. They're paying for things like waking watches. I meet with people in these blocks all the time. It is absolutely heartbreaking that a lot of these residents, they're key workers, they're teachers, and some are even firefighters. And it's absolutely devastating to see that they are dealing with a cost of living crisis just like Londoners all over the city, but on top of that they still have unsellable, unsafe flats, and it's not good enough how slow the government has been, and this is national regulation that we need. Thank you.
Thank you. Assembly Member Sem Moima.
Thank you. I represent Hackney, Islington and Waltham Forest, and I'm a member of the Labour Group, and I have the pleasure of chairing the Housing Committee this year. And so I just wanted to say, before I go on to my point, I think Andrew forgot to mention that there haven't been allocations because the government told the mayor to stop. But I just wanted to... Just responding, just factual correction. But I just wanted to say that we all know, irrespective of where you live, the type of home that you live, London has and continues to have a housing crisis. And it's not a question of just family-sized housing that we need more of. We need homes which the woman here who is worried about affording to drive to work can afford a home, whether to rent or to buy. Yes, the mayor has been allocated £4.8 million, but in order to build the actual amount of social housing that all Londoners can afford to rent, we would need 5 to 7 times more than that per year. And with the inflation in housing costs and in building costs at running up to 45%. We need a hell of a lot more than that. So I just want us to continue at the Assembly to continue to push for more resources so that we can actually genuinely get the homes that we need, and to really continue to advocate for the Londoners who are really, really suffering. We've done some work this year on women in housing, and I'm really proud. At the beginning of the year, as a committee, we went to look at the young women who might be solo parents, the issues that they're facing and the issues around having homes to move into because of the lack of move-on accommodation for people in temporary accommodation. I have no doubt that many of those women would really love to have a two-bedroom flat somewhere to live anywhere in London, but it's a question of building it and having that funded.
Thank you, thank you. All right, thank you. We're now going to move on to the next section, which is London's economic recovery. If I could have people indicating, please, for that. Young lady here in white, please, number 5.
I'm Louise Felstead. I'm a local business owner. I have a day nursery. I've been running it for the last 20 years. This borough has a number of small businesses, and I hope I can speak for all of us. Can you identify what's being done to reduce the rates of private nurseries generally across London? With rate increases, tax increases, energy increases, how do you expect us local small businesses to survive? I'm a small family business owner. I want to pay my staff more. Parents in the area can't afford nursery care. The people who are going to suffer are those who are disadvantaged, and that's already started happening. The big chains are coming in and they're paying staff more. They come in and take over. Some school programs are opening places for younger children. I don't disagree with that, because the younger children that they're taking in are disadvantaged children, mainly. What actions will you take to ensure we survive during this level of uncertainty? Nursery businesses are in crisis with respect to recruitment and expenditure. We employ local people, local youngsters, mothers, older people, young. We had a number of kickstarters during the period of, and we had to furlough staff. But I was one of 10 nursery owners in Redbridge that opened during COVID. We opened for key workers, and we were a specialist site for children with disabilities. The messages coming out of Whitehall: taxes will increase, local services will suffer. Whilst I accept, on the whole, I expect my local council and central council to be doing something. What actions are you taking to survive, to ensure that we survive?
Thank you. See, young man there with the black, number 1 next to you. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, you spent £400,000 on tackling food insecurity, but spent £700,000 on beach parties. Do you think you're giving Londoners value for money? And second, do you regret spending £700,000 on 2 beach parties? Thank you.
Right, I've got an online question. Mr. Mayor, tourism and foreign investment could help London's economic recovery. How are you planning on attracting foreign investment and increase tourism? Here are your 3 questions, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Keith. Louise, thank you for your question and for the business that you run. So one of the things that the Labour Party would do if we won the next general election is to abolish business rates. Because business rates is hemorrhaging businesses on the high street. You can't compete with business rates so high. That's a good example of a simple thing that make a big difference to your business, because business rates go up, the rateable value, the relief doesn't benefit you, and you're struggling because of the overheads you face, which is really, really important. But I recognise childcare is very expensive often, but businesses need to make a profit for obvious reasons, and there's nothing wrong at all with making a profit. You mentioned the work of Redbridge Council, who are really trying to support small businesses, trying to support the high street. The 2 things we're doing that will benefit you is, one is, if you get a chance, go to the London Business Hub. That's a one-stop shop to support small businesses like yours in relation to not just advice and assistance, but also signposting. And the second thing we're doing is a High Streets for All package, working with councils to support businesses like yours on the high street. And it's really important to support more childcare more nurseries rather than less, because there's more, people go to work, they need childcare that's on their doorstep, which is the really important thing we're going to do. So please, when you get a chance, go to both those things, the High Streets for All Fund, but also the London Business Hub as well. Look, all I say to you, sir, in a respectful way, is, don't believe the nonsense you read in relation to money City Hall may have spent, may not have spent. I mean, you're reading, I say with respect, Tory propaganda in relation to a beach party and stuff. And I've got nothing against planted questions, but I think let's take it seriously what people are here for tonight, which is to hold the Assembly and the Mayor to account. So we spend, as City Hall, a lot of money helping boroughs regenerate their communities, but also we spend a lot of money supporting children who often only have one meal a day, which is the free school meal they receive in primary school. And so what we've done in City Hall is support not just those families who are struggling in relation to food poverty, but support families who are struggling as well. So in City Hall, since I've been there, we've increased fourfold, quadrupled the number of employees paying a London living wage, which supports the families you claim to care about in relation to your concern about food security and the money we spend there. So that is more than 3,700 employers now paying the London living wage. We've introduced a good work standard, so more than 100 employers, which employ more than 250,000 people, are now on the good work standard, so their parents get a decent salary to feed their family a decent meal during the course of the day. During school holidays, we work with the Social Fund and Kitchen Social to make sure children can eat nutritional meals during their summer holidays. And I'm really proud of the 4 councils, you won't like it, they're 4 Labour councils, that are giving free school meals to all their kids in primary school as well. And by the way, you also won't like this, but it's great councils like Redbridge and Waltham Forest, I'm afraid they're Labour, that are doing really good work with their communities in relation to supporting young people, supporting families, because as we approach winter and people are choosing between heating and eating, they'll be opening community centres and libraries to allow people to come along to stay warm as well. And so it's really important to put on record my thanks to the good work being done across our city. And the final thing I'll say in relation to food insecurity is I think actually what the government should do, it costs £400 per child, is to make all children in primary schools, all children eligible to free school meals. That would make a big difference. Now, I appreciate you won't like it, because obviously it doesn't go to your agenda, but it's a good way of addressing food insecurity that you claim to care about. In relation to the online question about tourism, look, during the pandemic, as a consequence of people not coming to London, we lost about £11 billion from our economy, £11 billion. About £8 billion is international tourists, and about £3 billion is domestic tourists, people from across the country who come to London, stay in hotels, go to restaurants, go to the theatre, go to live entertainment and so forth. So we in City Hall began a campaign, Let's Do London, to bring tourists back from around the country and to bring tourists back from around the world. Around the world, we're targeting the USA, France and Germany. We've got adverts around the country, and here's the good news. This summer, we've had a fantastic recovery in central London and in London. Tourists are coming back. One of the silver linings of the weak pound is tourists can get a good value coming to London, because we need these tourists back. 1 out of 6 jobs in our city, 1 out of 6 jobs is in this industry. Think about all the people who work in restaurants and hotels and in bars, live entertainment. They need people coming back, and so I'm really proud people are coming back. And the really good news, if they come back, they use public transport, which means fares going to TfL, which is really important as well. And we'll be making more announcements to encourage more tourists to come back to London over the course of the autumn, over the course of the winter, and over the course of 2023 as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right, I've seen 3 Assembly members, but if you could keep your answers very short, please. The first Assembly member is Assembly Member Joanne McCartney.
Yes, thank you. I just want to address Louisa's point about childcare, because the early years of a child's life are vital to their future development and prospects. So can I just say a big thank you for the work you did during the pandemic. You were really on the front line keeping those nurseries open. I think we all owe you, a real debt of gratitude. So I was been really pleased, particularly over the last couple of years, that the Mayor has invested in quite significant business support for the early years sector. So if you do go on that business hub, there are dedicated pages there with regards to early years education settings, and a lot of the business advice and webinars and workshops that were done are on there and can be viewed again. The other thing that the Mayor has been doing over the last year is running a campaign to actually advise parents about their rights to take up their free early years places, and that's going to be vital with the cost of living, because we do know that it's particularly women that drop out of the labour market, and we've seen that over the last few years as well. And we already have a lower rate of maternal employment in London than the rest of the country. So can I just say a big thank you, and it is an area that the Mayor has done a lot of work in.
Thank you. I've seen Assembly Member Sian Berry.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all those questions. I wanted to go back to questions about small businesses and facilities for the community and recovery and the high street, because I've been listening to Londoners since we came back into City Hall after the last election and talking to them about what they want to change in their local areas, what would give them hope. And what people have been saying is they are very acutely aware of the empty buildings and facilities that they can see on their high streets, the empty shops, but also empty council-owned buildings. And I did a bit of research and a report which I called Dead Spaces, because that's what people were calling them to me. They were really aware that these spaces were just lying dead in their communities and not contributing. And I asked councils, because you can't FOI private businesses, I asked all the councils how many dead spaces there were in their own buildings. And the average per borough was 24, and it included shops, as you would imagine, industrial spaces, some schools, some care homes, and yes, nurseries. And I think these spaces lying empty ought to be being used and being used to help people who are struggling to provide services that the community need, because we need to keep our communities strong. We need to be building up more community businesses, more things that serve people in their local areas, like your nursery, but also shops. Also, I went to the opening of a fixing factory, a shop that had been opened up by the council that had been empty, that allowed people to bring their stuff to be fixed, saving them money at the same time, helping people get new skills. And we just need more of that. People need more hope, but also the councils need to be contributing to making sure that there are spaces for people to get together and build that hope in.
Thank you, Assembly Member. I've got Assembly Member Sakina Sheikh.
Thank you, Chair, and I couldn't agree more with Assemblymember Berry. We need more hope, because I think I wanted to just sort of reflect back and say thank you to everyone in this room for coming and drawing on a lot of your experiences, no matter what topic we've discussed. And I think the thread that's been consistent is discussing the cost of living crisis. And I personally find it unacceptable in one of the richest countries in the world, where children are going hungry, where children don't have shoes, where people are working 2 to 3 jobs and still can't pay their bills, where people are sitting on their sofas and they are freezing. I think there is enough money to go around. I think it has been mismanaged by this government. Decade after decade, Tory government after Tory government have made political choices that have resulted in poverty. They have made political choices that have resulted in wages stagnating. They have made political choices that means we are choosing between heating and eating. And let us not forget that this cost of living crisis comes in a backdrop of 10 years of austerity. I'm also a local councillor. I've had to make choices choosing between whether we fund children's mental health services or whether elderly folk get care. These are inhumane decisions, and austerity was a political choice, and the cost of living crisis is the result of political choices by this government. So I think as we go... So I think the Tories have made it very clear that they cannot manage the economy. They cannot manage this country in the favour of working people. We just saw recently with their 5-week Prime Minister, who was all too happy to give tax cuts to the rich. Again, in the backdrop of austerity, in a backdrop of a cost of living crisis, it is disgraceful. So going forward, we need Labour in government, and we've shown you from City Hall what Labour in power can do. So we hope that we can...
Assembly member, can you wind up now, please? Have you already wound up the audience? Can you wind up yourself, please?
All I'm saying is what we have right now is the result of political choices, and it's not good enough, and that's what we're hearing from you. So we need new solutions, and we need new people to put those solutions in place.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, we are running out of time. I'm going to move on to any other topic. That can be anything from culture, health, education. Sorry. I'm going to come back to you, but I'm going to want to do the young lady in white first. Please, number 6, you can pick up the young lady in white and the brown spots, is it?
Thank you. My name's Louisa. I'm a magician in London, and I wanted to ask about an access problem, which isn't often talked about, and that's technology. So over the summer, I came with my sister, and we wanted to visit Parliament Hill Lido, and we found to our surprise, oh, you need to book in online. And I did it, it's fine. I have a computer, I have a phone. I'm 21st century, but I also thought about all the people who don't have phones and all the people who don't have computers. And it's not as simple as, oh, let's just give them computers, because there are some people who can't use phones and who can't use computers. So I wanted to ask the mayor what he's doing to address that, and I wanted to ask him actually about this event. I wanted to ask, was there provision for people who didn't have phones, or were we all expected to scan in with a mobile phone? Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to ask this young man here in blue, who's been indicating all night long.
About the pollution levels in London, why have we got flight paths over London if we're so polluted?
Right, sorry, say again?
Why don't we get rid of the planes from flying over London if we're so polluted?
Right, okay, thank you. All right, I haven't got, I can take one more question actually from the floor. I'm going to go over the back. I'm going to go for the lady in pink. Number 4, lady in pink, by you there, lady in pink.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Mr. Khan, and good evening for everyone. I'm speaking in behalf of all Ukrainian people that are now in the UK. The first question that, it hurts me that there is still a giant flag like under the Russian trade delegation house. One moment, I will tell the right where it is. But for me, it's unacceptable that every day we can see like a 3 or 4 meters flag on the Russian trade house. And the second, it's like I'm very helpful to British nation, and I'm very helpful to British people to help so much the Ukrainians. But now, 6 months they are here, and I don't know when this war will stop. So many people will have no place to live because they can not afford a rent. And many sponsors were having them for 6 months. So now this term of 6 months will end very soon. And like 100,000 people will be without accommodation. And it is, I think, also a very big problem for us. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm going to take one more question. And that's the young lady in the African outfit. Well, half of an African outfit. You know.
Thank you kindly, and a very good evening to everyone. And it's great being here. This question is a question I wanted to ask earlier. Basically, to the mayor, with increase of people feeling that the Metropolitan Police is an organisation that they cannot trust, what are your plans to deal with this, to bring in trust within the police? And on a backdrop, with today's report that most police officers should not really be where they should be. How are you going to deal with this? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor.
Can I thank all 4 questioners? So firstly, to Louisa at the back. So there are 3 big issues in relation to digital access that you talked about. One is some people haven't got the right kit, you're right, mobile phone, you know. Secondly is they're not aware how to use social media, digital, so forth. And thirdly, connectivity in relation to access to good connectivity. So Just to let you know, this came to the fore during the pandemic, because there were some children, you mentioned going swimming, there were some children who they were able to school from home because they had the right laptop or computer, their parents could help them out, they had good connection with Wi-Fi and so forth. Other children, they were using the mum or dad's mobile phone, there was no laptop or desktop computer, Wi-Fi was poor connection and their parents couldn't really help them. And so some children went backwards during the pandemic, and so that's brought to the fore this issue. So here's the good news. Working with London councils and many people across London, we have a programme to have digital access for all over the next few years, for every Londoner to have access to good connectivity, basic digital skills, and the device to support them to be online over the next 3 years. And so in relation to tonight's People's Question Time, that's organised by the civil servants in the GLA, not by politicians here. But they try and make sure there's people can access this place in relation to whether it's online questions or whether it's coming along tonight, including those who are visually impaired or who are disabled. But there's some good news, Louise, in relation to addressing the very issue you raised. So there isn't this sort of lottery where some people can use public services and others can't. The second question asked from the front in relation to planes. Look, one of the reasons why I objected to a new runway at Heathrow Airport was not just the additional air pollution that would cause, not just because of the carbon emissions, but because of the noise pollution as well a new runway at Heathrow would cause. I've responded to a consultation to expand City Airport. I've got big concerns in relation to that expansion as well, because we've got to be cognizant in relation to some of the challenges of there being more aviation in relation to climate change, in relation to air pollution, in relation to noise pollution as well. I think that's one of the issues where there's, genuinely speaking, cross-party consensus up until now, but there's still 10 minutes to go. So let's wait and see whether that cross-party consensus carries on. Yeah, quite. In relation to the friend from the back from Ukraine, so I met with the minister appointed to help Ukrainians coming to London, Lord Richard Harrington, who, a thoroughly decent man, understands from that job. So we haven't got a minister in charge of this issue, and so it's difficult for me to address some of the concerns you have in relation to what happens when that period runs out of support. Many, many generous Brits gave their homes because of that guarantee from the government. There is a concern what happens after a period of time. I know you, like many others, want to return home, but it's clearly not possible for the foreseeable future. So we'll carry on lobbying the government, although we haven't got a minister, Richard Harrington, to make sure you aren't forgotten. And by the way, I don't think you're invading our country. I think you're somebody who's a South Street. We have a long and proud history of being a safe haven to refugees and to asylum seekers. And that great man there, Sir Winston Churchill, wrote the International Declaration of Human Rights and was crucial in the European Court of Human Rights being set up. And we should be proud of that rather than calling people like you invaders, as some people do. And in relation to the question, the very important question there, can I just be, we've got to be careful with language. The report today didn't say that most of the police shouldn't be there. What the report today said was there are some concerns about poor vetting around the country in relation to when some people join the police service, they may have convictions. When some police officers are in one police force where there's issues, they may transfer in. And it's a really serious issue for all 43 police forces. And that's why I welcome the report from the Inspectorate today. But the reason why your question is so important is we police by consent, right? If you haven't got confidence in the police service and you're the victim of crime, you're not going to come forward and report the crime. You're not going to, if you witness a crime, come forward and be a witness to help someone join the police service. But I tell you what, between more trust, highest. When I lost confidence in the former commissioner, a lot of people criticised me, including members on this panel, including the former Home Secretary, the former Policing Minister, the former Prime Minister, the former Chief of Her Majesty's Inspectorate, and the former commissioner. But the reason why I lost confidence in her was because of the fact that too many Londoners had lost confidence in our police service. It plummeted, and that impacts the ability of the decent, dedicated, brave officers doing their job if trust and confidence goes to record levels. And I think we should give Sir Mark our support. We should give Lynn Owens our support because they're trying really hard to take people with them. But also, we've got to recognise there are some really dedicated, decent, brave officers who want to do right by us, and they run towards danger. They make sure we're safe when there are big challenges, and I think they deserve our support to make sure we get rid of the culture and the systems which lead to trust and confidence plummeting.
Thank you. I've seen 2 members indicate, but please, can you just keep it to no more than 1 minute each, please? Thank you. The first member is Umesh Desai.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very brief. 2 points about the question of trust and confidence in the police. This is what I said to the outgoing commissioner in public at the Police and Crime Committee. Look, just accept. If you've got problems, just say, look, we don't think that the criticism is fair, but we'll look into things. Institutional racism, institutional sexism, institutional corruption. I'm dealing with the family of Jack Taylor, who was the last murder victim of Stephen Port in Barking, which exposed homophobia in the police force. It was the sisters of Jack Taylor who went and told the police the links between different murders. Basic incompetence. Through their campaigning, they put the issue of homophobia in the mat on the political agenda. The new commissioner has made the right noises so far. He said, look, there are serious problems, and we could address them. Because if you don't accept that there is a problem, how on earth can you devise strategies to actually tackle the problem? And this is what was the failure, basic failure of Cressida Dick. She simply had this self-denial. And my final point is about the cost of living crisis, which is also a low wages crisis. Whilst the energy companies are raking in massive profits, the Amazon workers, I'm a member of the GMB trade union, and I went down to Tilbury to meet the Amazon workers. Their pay rise, guess what it is? They're being offered a derisory 35 pence an hour increase. You might as well not offer them anything. Tonight, whilst we are here, thousands of trade unionists, public sector workers are in Westminster lobbying their MPs, asking for fair pay and £15 per hour minimum wage. And that is the sort of thing that I think we're going to be talking about, low wages and what can we do about it. And I think that this government's inaction and hypocrisy says it all, really. So it's also a low wages crisis, and the unions actually, quite rightly, are taking to the streets. No one wants to go on strike, but the CWU, TASA, the rail workers, they've been left with no choice but to actually organize to ask for a fair wage, and there's nothing wrong with that, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, thank you, Assemblyman. Right, the very last one. Assembly Member Emma Best, we are out of time, but can you do it really quickly? Thank you.
Well, everyone probably wants to go home, so I'll be very, very quick. Just because a really important question around digital exclusion, and just to say that there's a really great report by Age UK called Mind the Digital Gap. We had a cross-party motion which I put forward, and that was approved cross-party, and the Mayor has, I believe, very recently agreed to adopt all the recommendations from that report that we suggested he do, so we'll be watching closely to see that that happens, but that is very good news. Of course, we also had a cross-party motion in support of Ukraine, and anything that we can do to be of support to Ukrainians within London, please do contact all Assembly members. We are here for you and united in that. And finally, just on flight paths, I wonder perhaps the Mayor's supportive because he has flown himself and his team around the world 14 times. And he did recently, I think even just last week or the week before, choose to fly to Argentina for a hybrid meeting. All this whilst charging people £12.50 out in outer London to drive their cars.
Okay, thank you. Right, well, unfortunately, that's all we have time for tonight. I'm sorry, that's all. Sorry, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. No, sit down or go. Sit down, sit down, sit down, please. Sit down. No, I'm just not, I'm just going to, look. No, okay, look, I'm sorry. No, I'm not asking. Yeah. I'm sorry.
There's a stitch up.
Sit down. No, this man is a politician anyway. This man is a politician. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry you haven't been called. Sit down. Sorry, can we remove the man, please? Can we remove that man, please? Can you remove? Okay, well, look, that does wind it up, guys. So thank you very much indeed. As I said before, if your questions weren't answered, please come and either contact myself or contact the Mayor directly online. Please remember to complete your online feedback forms via the link displayed on the screen. There's also QR cards on the doors on your way out. And don't forget to look out for the next People's Question Time. Thank you very much. Thank you. Have a safe journey home.